Up next for us this evening, birth rates around the country continue to decline, and that is also being reflected here in Western New York. The Buffalo News was first to report on this earlier in the week. Data from the state health department showing that there were 1,100 fewer babies born in the 8 counties of Western New York in 2020 compared to a decade before. That's despite the fact that we saw an actual increase in total population, thanks in large part to immigrants coming here. Erie County's fertility rate is below the state average. Joining us live now with more is Leslie Reynolds, a research support specialist with Cornell University who has been looking into this. Really appreciate you taking some time for us. And we hear this, number about the birth rate. Does the data that you've compiled kind of match up with the trends statewide and nationwide, or is Western New York kind of lagging behind here?
No, this fits pretty well within what we've seen across the state and also throughout the nation. And first, I want to say thank you for having me. Also, skipped right into the data right there. But for the most part, the Erie County and Western New York is about, I wouldn't say in the middle of the pack, but slightly below the state average, but certainly not the lowest or the highest.
Yeah, despite the declining birth rate, I mentioned there that Erie County actually saw a population increase during the last census, something that was widely celebrated here. But that really has to do with, immigrants and a lot of refugees resettling here. It's not that we are having more babies here. It's the opposite of that.
Right, that's what it looks like. For this particular interview, I dug into Erie County's trends for the last 10, 20 years, depending on the area. And it really does look like with that population increase that international migration was the key cause. Domestic migration, there was still some losses due to domestic migration, and net migration overall, even in years when there was really high international migration, net migration was negative. So there were more people moving out than moving in. So I think that's really where that came from. And certainly natural increase was negative in a lot of those years. So that's births minus deaths. So there were more deaths than births. Here and there, it fluctuated around zero for the last 20 years, but the key part there was international migration.
When we look at why the birth rate is going down, I know one of the reasons you found is that many women are either getting married later in life than happened in decades past, or maybe deciding to just have children later in life, even if they married earlier. How does that kind of factor into the numbers as we're seeing them now?
Yes, fertility trends are really difficult to pinpoint. So I didn't look specifically at factors that drive these decreases, though there's a large body of literature on more nuanced findings about that. We mostly looked at trends for this brief. But with the decline, it's often following a larger societal change. So the need to have dual income households, the movement of women into the workforce in the past century. So that can cause a lot of changes in what we expect from women and families and partners while they're creating their family and how long we expect people to work. So there are a lot of obstacles that are becoming more in the forefront of people's family lives. So there's kind of a overall decline across the nation.
Yeah, and nationally, we've certainly, as this has become a topic, not just in the United States. I mean, there are some countries where the birth rate is so low, there are kind of serious worries about what that's going to do to their economies. But there are also instances in which women are just having fewer children, right? It's not so much that they're doing it at what point in their life. It's just maybe instead of having 2.5 as it used to be, now it's like 1.5 or whatever, right?
Yes, even I think it was in 2020 or 2019 it was 1.63, the total fertility rate in New York, and in 2021 it was 1.55. So we're inching a little bit closer to the one child per woman rather than the two-child norm, which has been really salient in the last few decades. But there are other countries such as Japan and other areas, I believe South Korea as well. And fertility trends are very difficult to change. I mean, there are a lot of programs that go into trying to promote child rearing, childbearing, but with economic needs and different factors to consider, it's difficult to get people to have more children.
Yeah, speaking specifically about South Korea, I've read some interesting articles about all the programs that they're doing to try to change that trend because they're really worried about it. Bigger picture then for people who are watching this segment and who are wondering what big picture do we make of this? And do you see the trend changing at all, or is this just sort of the new norm and we have to figure out a way to deal with it?
Well, I think the last few years are obviously landmark for quite a few reasons. So it is also possible with data quality and such, like the census could have been slightly off, there could have been undercounts, and even with 2010 census, there may have been undercounts in certain populations. So we have to compare numbers with caution, but also with 2020, I think at 2020 and 2021, these will be I think lower fertility rates than we can expect in the next few years, but there's kind of always been and always will be a natural fluctuation up and down according with different events that are happening. But I think people have been especially weary of having children in times when they're economically struggling and they need to meet their um, day-to-day needs first before investing in having a family. So I can see that the trend could rebound, but how much it will is yet to be seen and very difficult to predict.
Yeah, absolutely. Leslie Reynolds, a research support specialist with Cornell University. Thanks so much for taking some time for us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.